It was a cold, silent day in deep space when humanity's warship, the Horizon, made its first strike. For months, the aliens had controlled the war, their vast fleets spreading terror across the galaxy. But today, everything was about to change. The Horizon wasn't just another ship. It was a symbol of human resilience, of a species who had been pushed to the brink but never broken. The crew, a mix of humans and other allied species, stood ready for battle, their faces tense with anticipation. Captain Elena Drake, a woman whose every decision could mean life or death, paced back and forth, her thoughts focused on the task at hand. The Horizon was no ordinary ship. It was armed with technology far beyond what the enemy had ever encountered. Yet, despite its power, it wasn't invincible. Captain Drake knew the risks, but she also knew that this strike could shift the entire course of the war. The massive warship glided silently through the dark expanse of space, the crew prepared for the inevitable. The Horizon was heading straight into the heart of the enemy's fleet, a fleet that had crushed every resistance they'd encountered. The aliens, with their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers, had always been the ones to dictate the flow of battle. But now, humanity was about to take the first step in rewriting the rules. Captain Drake stood in front of the command deck, her hands gripping the control panel. She didn't have to speak. The crew knew what was at stake. The tension was thick, everyone waiting for that single moment when the battle would begin. Then, the enemy appeared, an immense alien fleet, their ships gleaming in the cold light of distant stars. They were spread out in perfect formation, seemingly invulnerable. But the Horizon wasn't afraid. It was built for this very moment. The enemy didn't know it yet, but they were about to face something entirely new. The Horizon moved swiftly, almost as if it was alive, its AI syncing with the crew's thoughts and actions, anticipating each move before it was made. Captain Drake's voice was calm as she issued the order. Initiate strike. Without warning, the Horizon unleashed its first wave of firepower. The shockwave from the blast sent ripples through space, and the enemy fleet began to break apart. Ships that were once seen as indestructible were now torn apart by the sheer power of the Horizon's weapons. The crew watched in awe as the impossible unfolded before their eyes. The aliens hadn't even had time to react before the Horizon struck again. It was as though the ship had anticipated every move, every defense the enemy had in place. Within minutes, the tide of battle shifted. On the other side, the enemy fleet was in disarray. The commanders, who had once believed their victory was certain, now found themselves scrambling. Their ships were damaged, their communication lines broken, and their tactics no longer effective. For the first time in the war, the alien forces were the ones on the defensive. There was confusion among their ranks, whispers of disbelief. How could this happen? They had never encountered anything like the Horizon. The battle raged on. The humans on board the ship could feel the weight of the moment. Each victory brought them closer to securing their place in this war, but they knew it wasn't over yet. There were still dangers ahead, still threats they couldn't fully understand. Captain Drake's mind raced as she tried to keep up with the chaos unfolding before her. Every decision, every command could change the outcome of this conflict. But in the midst of the confusion, the aliens had underestimated them. They had thought of humans as just another species to conquer, a fleeting obstacle in their path to galactic domination. But now, that perception was shattered. The Horizon had changed everything. Despite their initial success, the crew knew this was just the beginning. The enemy would not take this blow lying down. They would regroup, replan, and come back stronger. The question was, could humanity keep up with them? Could the Horizon deliver another devastating strike before the aliens could retaliate? Captain Drake stood silent, staring at the battlefield ahead. The silence on the bridge was broken only by the hum of the ship's engines and the occasional report from the crew. Each member of the team knew that this moment could be their last. The war had just begun for real, and no one knew what would come next. The alien commanders were scrambling. They had never expected humanity to strike so decisively, and now they were left to deal with the aftermath. Their once perfect formation was shattered, their fleet broken into smaller, disorganized units. The surprise attack had left them confused, vulnerable, and desperate to regroup. But as the horizon sailed through them, when they finally arrived, the sight that greeted them was unlike anything they had ever seen. The alien fleet had gathered around a massive, glowing structure, an enormous machine built deep within the heart of a dying star. It was this machine that was harnessing the unstable energy, and it was this machine that held the key to the aliens' power. But there was more. As the horizon got closer, they realized that the machine wasn't just a power source. It was a weapon capable of destroying entire planets with a single burst. The crew knew that if they didn't destroy it soon, the war would be lost, and billions of lives would be wiped out in an instant. The enemy, who had so far been one step ahead, were now caught off guard, unsure of what the humans would do next. The stakes had never been higher. Captain Drake and her crew had one shot at taking down the weapon before it could be activated. The alien forces, sensing their vulnerability, began preparing for an all-out defense. But as the clock ticked down, the crew of the Horizon knew they had to act fast. The hidden power of the enemy had been revealed, but now it was up to humanity to stop it before it was too late. The question remained, would they succeed, or had they walked straight into a trap from which there was no escape? The tension was unbearable, and every second felt like a lifetime as they prepared for the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The tension aboard the Horizon was at an all-time high. The crew had just completed a successful strike against the alien fleet, catching them off guard and shifting the balance of the war. But as the days passed, the excitement of their victory began to fade, replaced by a growing unease. Something didn't feel right. The crew had celebrated their success, but now the feeling of victory was slipping through their fingers like sand. The once unified group began to show signs of strain. Whispers filled the corridors, and eyes that once gleamed with confidence now reflected doubt. No one could pinpoint the cause, but the air aboard the ship was thick with suspicion. The victory should have been a moment of triumph, but instead, it felt like the calm before a storm. Captain Elena Drake paced nervously on the bridge, her mind racing. The crew had become increasingly fragmented, and trust, something vital for a crew in wartime, was beginning to crumble. It wasn't just the stress of the war or the long hours that had everyone on edge. Something far more dangerous was at play. A shadow hung over the ship, something insidious that no one could explain. At first, it seemed like small things, a misplaced piece of equipment, a warning light flickering in the wrong place. But as time went on, the signs grew harder to ignore. It wasn't just mistakes. It was deliberate. Someone aboard the Horizon was sabotaging their efforts from within. Captain Drake called for a meeting with her senior officers, each one a trusted ally. She knew they had to find out who was behind the sabotage before it escalated further. She couldn't afford to let any more time slip away. The enemy had grown wise to humanity's tactics, and any weakness within their ranks could cost them everything. As the officers assembled, the atmosphere was thick with suspicion. Everyone had their eyes on everyone else, as if expecting the traitor to reveal themselves. Drake's voice broke the silence. "We have a traitor on board," she said, her words cutting through the tension like a knife. "I don't know who, but someone is working against us." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, their faces showing disbelief and shock. Betrayal among the ranks was one of the hardest things to accept, but the evidence was undeniable. Equipment had been tampered with, weapons had been sabotaged, and critical systems had been mysteriously malfunctioning at the worst possible times. The crew had lost valuable minutes during their last mission due to these malfunctions, and it nearly cost them their lives. Now, it seemed clear that the problem wasn't just bad luck. It was something far more dangerous. Captain Drake gave the order for a full investigation, but deep down, she knew that this was no ordinary saboteur. This was something much darker. As the investigation unfolded, more signs began to surface. The sabotage wasn't just about malfunctioning equipment, it was deliberate, calculated. Whoever was behind it was using their knowledge of the ship's systems to cause the most damage in the most subtle ways. The crew was running out of time. The enemy was regrouping, and the Horizon would soon be in the line of fire again. They couldn't afford to be weak, especially now. The traitor was out there, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Days passed in a haze of suspicion and fear. The crew became more divided, and every action was met with doubt. Who? It wasn't until the ship entered a particularly volatile sector of space that the traitors' actions finally became clear. The ship was under attack by an alien scout ship, small but fast. The Horizon had been prepared for this, or so they thought. The alien ship launched a series of devastating missiles, targeting key systems. But this time, the crew wasn't ready. A critical defense system failed at the exact moment they needed it. The damage was catastrophic. The bridge was thrown into chaos as alarms blared, and the crew scrambled to regain control. Captain Drake, her heart pounding, quickly realized what had happened. The saboteur had struck again, but this time, it was more than just equipment. This was an attack on their very survival. In the confusion, Drake made a bold decision. She ordered the crew to lock down all systems and initiate a full lockdown of the ship. No one was to leave their posts until the traitor was found. Every door was sealed, and security was doubled. The crew was on high alert, each member watching the others with distrust. It was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. Hours later, a breakthrough came. One of the junior officers, Lieutenant Daniel Harrow, came forward with a shocking revelation. He had been in the lower levels of the ship when he had overheard a conversation between two senior officers, ones who had once been trusted allies. They were discussing plans to sabotage the mission, to allow the alien forces to gain an upper hand in the war. The evidence was undeniable. Lieutenant Harrow had overheard everything. The two officers were involved in the betrayal, working in secret to ensure humanity's downfall. Captain Drake confronted the traitors in front of the entire crew. The revelation was met with shock, disbelief, and anger. The crew had trusted these officers, fought side by side with them, and now they had to pay the price for their treachery. As the traitors were taken away, Captain Drake addressed the crew. "This betrayal won't break us," she said firmly. "We will move forward, stronger than before. We will win this war, and we will do it together." But even as the traitors were removed from the ship, a lingering question remained: how much damage had been done? How many more secrets lay hidden in the shadows? The crew knew they couldn't afford to lower their guard again. The war was far from over, and they had learned a harsh lesson. Trust was a fragile thing, and even within the ranks of humanity, danger lurked where it was least expected. The war had raged for what felt like an eternity. Humanity's forces were on the brink of victory, yet the enemy refused to surrender. The alien invaders, a brutal and relentless race, had seen their fleets fall one by one. But there was a deeper sense of unease within the Horizon, humanity's most advanced warship. Despite their success, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that something larger, something far more dangerous, was still out there, waiting. Captain Elena Drake had never been one to believe in superstitions, but lately, strange things had been happening aboard the ship, disturbing things that no one could explain. Equipment malfunctioned at the worst times, systems that had been flawless suddenly failed, and a sense of foreboding had settled over the crew. It felt like the calm before the storm. Late one night, as the stars outside flickered like distant embers, a deep tremor ran through the horizon. It was a sudden jolt, as if something beneath the ship had shifted. The crew rushed to their posts, confusion spreading like wildfire. Captain Drake stood on the bridge, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of the data. Everything appeared normal until a strange signal appeared on the ship's radar, far beyond any known communication frequency. It wasn't a distress signal, nor was it from the enemy. It was ancient, buried deep in space, and it pulsed with an odd, almost magnetic energy. Lucid, the ship's AI worked quickly to decipher the signal. The language was unrecognizable, but there was one word that repeated almost as if it were a name: eons. Captain Drake ordered the crew to investigate, though she couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary discovery. The signal was too powerful, too precise. It felt like someone or something was trying to tell them something. But who? And why? The crew traced the signal to an abandoned, uncharted sector of space. As they approached the coordinates, the tension in the air grew thick. The sector was known for its dead planets and empty stars, a place few had ventured into for centuries. Yet the signal led them to a small, rocky moon, its surface pockmarked with craters. There was nothing remarkable about it, except for a single glowing structure buried deep beneath the surface, an ancient, metallic obelisk. That seemed to pulse with an energy that defied explanation. It was as if it had been waiting for them. Captain Drake stood at the edge of the excavation site, gazing at the monument. It was covered in strange symbols, unlike anything the crew had ever seen. The metal was unlike anything they had on the horizon, smooth, seamless, yet unnervingly alien. Something about it felt wrong, like a hidden power was locked inside. As they dug deeper, the crew uncovered an entrance, a massive doorway that seemed to open on its own as if it were alive. They stepped inside, into a vast chamber lit by an eerie, pulsing light. The walls were covered in intricate carvings, depicting scenes of an ancient civilization, one that had long since vanished. The carvings told a story of a race far older than the aliens they fought. A race that had once controlled unimaginable power. And at the heart of it all, a single word appeared over and over again: eons. The discovery sent shockwaves through the crew. They had stumbled upon something that could change the course of the war, something so powerful it could shift the balance in humanity's favor. But the question remained: what was it? What had been left behind in this forgotten corner of space? As they continued to explore the chamber, they uncovered a hidden compartment, its contents sealed in a strange crystalline casing. Inside was a device, small and unassuming, but radiating with a power that made the air hum. This was the key. The device was ancient, older than anything the crew had ever seen, yet it pulsed with an energy that felt familiar, as though it had been waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The crew's excitement was palpable, but so was the fear. They knew they were on the brink of uncovering something dangerous. The enemy, who had relentlessly pursued humanity across the stars, had no idea what was hidden on this moon. But it wasn't just the aliens they had to worry about. As the crew studied the device, they realized its power was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was capable of manipulating space-time itself, distorting gravity, bending light, even opening wormholes to other parts of the universe. It was a weapon, but it was far more than just that. It was a force of nature, something that could reshape reality itself. As Captain Drake and her officers debated their next move, a sudden, chilling realization struck. The aliens had been hunting humanity for a reason. They had known about this ancient power all along. And now, the Horizon had unwittingly unearthed it. The device was not just a weapon, it was a tool of unimaginable destruction. The aliens had been searching for it, and now that it had been found, they would stop at nothing to claim it for themselves. The tension aboard the Horizon grew unbearable. The crew knew the time had come to make a choice. They could use the device and turn the tide of the war, but doing so would come with risks they couldn't fully understand. The power contained within it was limitless, but it was also dangerous, unstable, unpredictable. And if the enemy got their hands on it first, the consequences would be catastrophic. Captain Drake made the decision to take the device back to the ship, but as they attempted to leave the chamber, a sudden shockwave erupted from the moon's surface. The aliens had found them. They had been tracking the signal all along, and now they were closing in. The crew raced back to the Horizon, the device secured in the ship's vault, but they knew the battle wasn't over. The war had just taken a dangerous turn. The enemy had been hunting this power for a reason, and now that it was in their possession, humanity had a decision to make: use the device and risk everything, or destroy it before the enemy could get their hands on it. The weight of that choice hung heavily on Captain Drake's shoulders, for she knew that the outcome of this war and the fate of humanity now rested on the shoulders of her crew. Whatever decision they made would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. The vast expanse of space had never felt so cold. Captain Elena Drake stood on the bridge of the Horizon, gazing at the swirling nebula in the distance. The final battle was approaching. The alien fleet, once scattered and weakened by humanity's relentless attacks, had regrouped, gathering strength for one last, decisive assault. It was no longer a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future. This battle would determine whether humanity would remain free or be swallowed by the alien empire that sought to destroy them. There would be no retreat. there would be no second chances. The crew of the Horizon had seen the horrors of war. They had fought countless battles, suffered heavy losses, and yet, despite it all, they had never backed down. But now, as they prepared for the final confrontation, a sense of dread filled the air. The alien fleet was massive, far larger than anything they had encountered. Captain Drake's mind raced as she looked over the final strategy. The alien fleet had a weakness, a flaw that had been discovered during the earlier battles, but it was buried deep within their formation. If they could strike at the heart of the enemy's command ship, they could disable the entire fleet. But getting to that ship wouldn't be easy. The aliens had anticipated this move and had already set up an impenetrable defense around it. The Horizon was humanity's last hope, and its crew would have to pull off a daring maneuver that no one else could. The tension aboard the ship was palpable. Every officer, every soldier, and every technician knew that this battle would define their legacy. The moments leading up to the attack were filled with quiet determination, but there was also fear of the unknown, fear of failure, and fear that they might not make it through. Captain Drake tried to steady her nerves, but deep down, she knew the gravity of the situation. If they lost here, everything would be lost. There would be no more hope, no more future. With a deep breath, Captain Drake issued the order. The Horizon would lead the charge, drawing the enemy's attention while the rest of the fleet moved into position. It was a risky strategy, one that could end in disaster, but it was their only option. The ship's engines roared to life as they surged forward, breaking through the darkness of space like a comet on fire. The alien fleet loomed ahead, a wall of steel and firepower, but the Horizon pressed on, undeterred. The first wave of the alien ships met them head-on, unleashing a torrent of fire that lit up the void like 1,000 exploding stars. The crew of the Horizon fought back with everything they had. The ship's weapons system came to life, sending powerful beams of energy into the alien ships. The battle raged around them, chaos erupting in every direction. The bridge shook with every impact, and alarms blared as the Horizon took damage. But they kept going, pushing through the enemy's defenses, knowing that the heart of the fleet was still ahead. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Drake's voice rang out, calm but firm. "Keep pushing forward. We can't let them regroup." Her words were a rallying cry, giving the crew the strength they needed to keep fighting. It was clear that this battle was different. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving humanity's strength, showing the aliens that they couldn't be crushed so easily. Every shot fired, every ship that fell, was a testament to their resolve. The Horizon pressed deeper into the heart of the alien fleet. The enemy began to adapt. Their ships closed in, cutting off escape routes and surrounding the human ship from all sides. But the crew had prepared for this. They knew the aliens would try to box them in, and they had a plan to counter it. The ship's weapons were dialed to maximum power, and with a single command from Captain Drake, the Horizon unleashed a devastating salvo that ripped through the enemy's defenses. For a moment, it seemed like victory was within reach. But then, something unexpected happened. A new wave of alien ships appeared out of nowhere, emerging from behind a nearby asteroid field. They were unlike anything the crew had seen before, sleek, fast, and heavily armed. These ships were designed for one thing: to hunt down the Horizon and destroy it. The sudden appearance of these ships threw the human fleet into disarray. For a moment, it seemed like all hope was lost. Captain Drake's mind raced. She knew that if they didn't take out the command ship soon, the entire battle would be lost. With a fierce resolve, she issued a daring new order. "We're going in. Full speed ahead." The crew looked at each other, eyes wide with uncertainty, but they trusted her. The crew of the Horizon had fought together through every hardship, and now was no different. With the full might of the Horizon's engines, they charged straight into the heart of the enemy formation, dodging fire and weaving through the alien ships. The new wave of enemies was relentless, but Captain Drake was determined to get to the command ship. It was now or never. In a last-ditch effort, the crew deployed the experimental weapon they had kept hidden until now, an energy pulse that could disrupt the alien fleet's communication and weapon systems. As the pulse shot out, the enemy ships froze in place, their weapons systems failing. The command ship, vulnerable for the first time in the battle, was in range. With one final push, the Horizon fired its most powerful weapon straight at the alien flagship. The impact was cataclysmic. The alien command ship exploded in a burst of blinding light, and with it, the rest of the fleet began to fall apart. The remaining ships scattered in chaos, unable to maintain coordination without their leader. One by one, the enemy ships,